Hey everybody, I'm Will Martin. In this video, I'm going to discuss a survey that was published, I think about a month ago, maybe. I just came across it a couple of weeks ago, and it's the 2023 survey of registered nurses, the pandemic's consequences. Basically, what it's going to show is how dissatisfied nurses are with their job, and I'm going to run through the numbers as quickly as I can. And I'm going to leave a link to this study below so that you can take a look at it for yourself and tell me what you think. So there's a lot of numbers to go through. I don't want to bore you to death, but I do think that you'll find some of this interesting. So let's just go through it. This was published by AMN Healthcare, which is a healthcare staffing agency, I think, out of Texas. And again, it was entitled The Pandemic's Consequences. It was authored by a guy that I did my DNP with in 2011 at TCU. I don't know him well, but I know he's been like a chief nursing officer and involved in administration most of his career. He's the chief clinical officer at AMN Healthcare. Anyway, the survey they conducted every 2 years. They started doing this in 2009, and it seems like every 2 years the survey shows that there's a growing nursing shortage due to retirements and a dearth in education and training for nurses' replacements. Also, rising utilization of healthcare services by older people. And that all leads to a crisis of lack of bodies. Now, the survey really centers around COVID. Obviously, in the last 3 years, we've been dealing with COVID. So I think you'll see that there has been a big change in nurses' perception of their job during and now, in the aftermath of COVID. But during COVID, sudden spike in patient demand, hospitals were sometimes overwhelmed. A lot of nurses just really started to question their profession. And there were a lot of conflicting values and beliefs that took place during the pandemic. I certainly was a witness to a lot of that. If you have any comments that you'd like to share in regard to that, please do below. But the result of all of that is it drove a lot of nurses away from the profession. Now, one thing that it doesn't mention is the vaccine mandates, which also drove quite a few nurses away from the profession, at least in my hospital here in New York. So the survey overall shows a very sudden decline in nurses' personal and professional views towards nursing since the last one was done in 2021. Now, historically, nurses typically hover around 80 or 85% in their job satisfaction. But since 2021, satisfaction dropped another 10 percentage points. Nurses' satisfaction with their quality of care dropped 12 points. Feeling emotionally drained rose 15 points. Worry that their job is affecting their health rose 19 points. And that's a lot. Likelihood to encourage others to become a nurse dropped 14 points. 90% of hospital CEOs say that nursing shortages are their most pressing workforce challenge. Only 15% of hospital-employed nurses in this 2023 survey plan to continue working in their current job into the next year. The other 85% of those are considering new places of employment or working as a travel nurse or going per diem or part-time or taking a job that's completely outside of direct patient care. Others are considering returning to school or just simply leaving nursing altogether. So the methodology of the survey. Now, the survey polled over 800,000 nurses in the United States between January 5th and 18th of this year. And if any of you got the survey, please let me know. I'm just curious to see, who got the survey. I did not get one. 18,226 people completed questionnaires, and the margin of error of that is calculated at 1% with a 99% confidence level. So the response rate was kind of a dismal 2.5%, but still 18,000 people completed the questionnaire. And as you know, if you deal with Press Ganey or any other hospital satisfaction survey that's sent out to patients, usually it's the folks that have a bone to pick that return the survey. I don't know if that has anything to do with the response rate here. Was it just the really disgruntled nurses that completed this survey? I don't know, but it's something that I think you have to consider that as a possibility. So Out of all the respondents, three-quarters of them were full-time workers, 25% worked part-time. The age of the respondents, you can see that there were very few respondents of the youngest generation. And it's also interesting to see that folks born between 1946 and 1964 comprised 21% of the respondents. That's a pretty large number of nurses that are really getting up at or beyond retirement age. 53% of nurses had bachelor's degrees, 15% with master's, 4% with diploma, and I was a diploma grad. So current employment setting, most of the nurses that responded to this work in a hospital or otherwise home health care, public community health, only 3% in academia. The executive summary of this survey showed that only 15% of nurses working in hospitals say they will continue working as I am in 1 year. 36% of hospital nurses say that they will continue working as nurses, but they're going to seek new places to work. 30% of nurses say they're likely to leave their career due to the pandemic, which is up 7 points from 2021. And 18% of nurses say that it's likely they're going to retire from nursing due to the pandemic. As far as career satisfaction, nurses' career satisfaction dropped over 10 points since 2021. Only a third of nurses say that they have ideal time to spend with their patients, which is down 10 points from 2 years ago. The percentage of nurses who are satisfied with the quality of care they provide is down 11%. When compared to older nurses, younger nurses are significantly less satisfied with their careers and jobs, and that's going to be borne out in some of the other numbers that I'll share with you here shortly. Nearly 9 in 10 nurses say that the nursing shortage is worse than it was 5 years ago, which is a 37-point increase from 2019. Only half of the nurses surveyed are likely to encourage others to become a nurse, which is a 14-point decline from 2021. Younger generations are less likely to recommend nursing to others. So the baby boomers, they're more likely to say nursing is still a pretty good gig. And I think, when you have been in nursing for a long period of time and you can see the big picture, I think that's why the older nurses are saying, it's a good job overall. You have a lot of choices. If you don't like what you're doing, you can go do something else. You'll always have a job. You'll always have income. There's not a lot of careers that you can say that's true. So I can see why baby boomers are more positive about it. Also, nurses with higher degrees are more likely to recommend nursing to others. And again, maybe because they can see the landscape a little bit better when they've achieved a higher degree, a master's degree or above. And now this makes sense that nurses with less stress at work are more likely to recommend nursing compared to nurses who have a lot more work stress. Nearly a third of nurses say that they're likely to leave nursing due to the pandemic compared to those nurses during the middle of the pandemic. Nurses with less than 5 years of experience are more likely to quit due to the pandemic than nurses with more than 5 years of experience. So again, we're seeing nurses that have less experience or nurses that are younger are less satisfied with their job and more likely to quit. Younger generations are more likely to leave their career due to the pandemic. Only 18% of baby boomers want to leave, but 39% of Gen Zs, 38% of millennials want out. Now, nurses that are eligible to retire, 17% in this survey were eligible, 83% not eligible to retire. Of those nurses that were eligible to retire, over half of them are going to retire in the next 3 years, and 43% are going to retire 4 or more years from now. So 4 in 5 nurses experience a great deal or a lot of stress in their job, which is up 16% from 2021. Again, the younger generations are experiencing more stress. 87% of Gen Zs and 85% of millennials, 81% of Gen Xers are saying that they are experiencing more stress. Nurse mental health and well-being. So mental health issues increased significantly from 2021, and the percentage of RNs who strongly or somewhat agree with these questions are as follows. If the question is, I often feel emotionally drained, 77%. said that they strongly or somewhat agree. I worry this job is affecting my health, 70%, strongly or somewhat agree. Most days I feel burned out, 68%. I feel misunderstood or unappreciated, 57%. I feel that I'm not getting what I want out of my job, 62%. And I often feel like resigning, 55%. So over half of nurses strongly or somewhat agree that they often feel like resigning from their job. Only a quarter of nurses, 26%, say that their employer supports a culture of wellness, which was down from 34% 2 years ago. Nearly a half say that their employer supports a culture of wellness a little or not at all. The authors say top 5 ways that nurses can effectively reduce stress at work is through more nurse input into decision making, creating a safer work environment, increasing salaries, reducing patients per nurse, and increasing support staff. Most nurses, 80%, say that the nursing shortage will be somewhat or much worse in the next 5 years. So here's the solutions according to the report's authors. Planning flexibility into daily scheduling. So deploy staff based on acuity. I think that that's done in my hospital. I see nursing administration working on that daily and deploying and redeploying people throughout the hospital. The other thing, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, creating an anti-racist workplace for nurses. This probably deserves its own video. I'm going to read this off, and I would love to know your comments on this here. So the authors recommend developing and disseminating knowledge about individual and systemic racism within the nursing profession and workplace. Advancing equity. I put not equality because there's a difference. All leaders accountable and must fully participate in anti-racism efforts. Increased hiring, promotion, and retention of Black and other underrepresented minority staff. Examine business structures through an anti-racist lens. Build a racial equity, not equality, culture. And financial investment in racial equity. Again, not equality. Increase funding for nurse educators, on and off-site wellness programs, care model redesign for staff shortages, and that's accomplished by identifying tasks that can be safely handled by other personnel, and then using telehealth. Other regulatory and legislative changes that they recommend: medical education supported through Medicare, not so for nurses, although I'll note that that opportunity was offered at its inception many, many years ago. So taking a look overall, for those that are still hanging in there and listening to this, in general, the younger nurses are having a harder time than the older nurses. The older nurses obviously have an option to retire. A lot of them have. A lot of them just simply said, this isn't worth it for me. This is a good opportunity to get out. But for the younger nurses, I think they're realizing that, what they got into maybe wasn't what they thought they were getting into. But overall, it's not an easy job. And I think low satisfaction is inherent in a job where you are constantly caring for other people. You're seeing people not at their best, and you're dealing firsthand with all of the social issues that go on within society. You're seeing it all when you're working as a nurse, whether it's in the emergency department or up on one of the floors or in a physician office. You're going to see all of that. Anyway, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this survey. Again, I'll post the link below so that you can call it up and take a look at it yourself. Tell me what you think. Otherwise, I appreciate you listening to the video, and I'll talk to you soon on the next video. Bye.